Hello everyone, welcome for this new video. I'm just still blocking in the figure and I thought it would be a good idea to stop and talk about a very common problem that many beginners have with the proportions on a figure like this, the proportion of the head especially. Most of the time it's too big or too small. I mean, there's always something wrong with the head. And there is a very simple trick or a very simple painting principle that many people can follow, and it doesn't take much, especially when you block in like this, is finish with the head. Do not start with the head. People are attracted by the head because it's a natural focus point, but you don't have to start with the head. Why that? Because, well, the entire body decides how the head is shaped, what's the angle of the head, the size of the head is determined by the rest of the body. So if you start with just the head and then try to put the rest at the right size with the right proportions, you're gonna struggle a lot because the head is most determined by how the body is positioned. Everything will determine the shape, the size, the angle of the head, the tilt, everything is determined by the rest of the body. So it would be a mistake to start with the head. So a very simple trick is to leave the head like undefined for as long as you can and try to keep it very simple. If you want to have a basic indication of the overall size, you can, like, the minimal thing you can do is just draw a basic line, but keep things very basic, because this already is sort of influencing my mind to think that the head has to be this big. I don't want that. So the best thing to do is to keep things very fluid and keep the head for the last part of the figure. Another good trick you can use is to compare the size of the head relatively to something. So you take a measurement with your arm by holding like the handle of a brush or something like this, and you use your thumb to determine the distance, and you compare that to the head, and you try to get the same on your model and on your actual painting. Try to get the same distance. Try to find something that has almost exactly the same size of the head in the relative measurements that you can do with your brush, holding it like this with your fingers, and try to compare it. You can also divide the head, like divide the length of the head, the size. Try to make all the small type of measurements that you can do. It will only help you build the right proportions for the head, and it will make it easy for you to fit everything with the right proportions. The right thing to do if you want to start blocking in like this, if you want to be quick, the best thing to do is to start with the torso. Why the torso? Because that's where all the weight is distributed. All the weight is here in the torso. It carries most of the body weight. So everything aligns with how the weight is distributed in the torso. So right here, for instance, the weight would be going like this because it's a seated position. The legs are irrelevant, so they don't carry any weight. But if it's an upright position, the legs follow the posture of the torso. So I'm going to first determine the torso and decide that about the size and the overall proportions, there's a point when you have to decide. I mean, you have to make a decision and say, okay, I can make this as big or small as I want, but I'm gonna just paint this torso, and I'm going to decide in my head that this is the size that I want. So this will determine the rest of the proportions. I'm not going to do a torso bigger or smaller than this. So I have to apply myself to paint it well at the right proportions. And then I'm going to determine the size and the shape of the legs by comparison with the torso. I'm going to decide the size of the hand by comparison with the torso. I'm going to decide the size of the arms by comparison with the torso. And finally, when I've done all this, I can decide and finish with the head, and it's going to fit right in. You won't have this sort of, awkward feeling when shoulders are like too low, too high, when the torso is shrinked or too big. If you start with the torso, everything's going to fit naturally with the natural gesture and how everything follows the weight of the body. The body is a unit. It's not just putting the head where it wants to be. It's an entire movement, an entire posture. But it's not the same thing if you're painting a portrait, for instance, where the head is the main focus point. But most of the time in a portrait, the rest of the body is cut off. So you don't have this type of problem. But you can have as well. Even if it was just a portrait, like let's say like this, I would still do a very basic box for the head and immediately start with the shoulders, because that's important even for just a portrait. You don't want your portrait to be just cut right here, because like that's not very elegant. It's not very nice. So most of the portraits have shoulders in them. You want the shoulders to follow the rest of the size of the head. So of course you want to immediately think of the shoulders as soon as you start your portrait, and especially when you're doing a complete figure like this one. Well, you want to start with the torso, legs, arms, hands, and finally the head. Well, the hands you can keep for whenever you want, because hands are very independent from the body, but the head is not independent from the body. So the head should be the last thing, and you can do the hands after the head, but do not start the head before the arms. That would be a mistake, because the arms, the position of the arm, can move the head slightly. They will push things around. So you first want to make sure that you have correctly proportioned arms before you start the head. After that, when you're sure that you have the right size, the right proportions, then the most difficult part only starts, and you have to actually finish the portrait and put the face together. That's a very different story. That's the most difficult part. But if everything has the right proportions, it will make your life a lot easier, and everything will just get at the right place at some point. It might be more or less difficult, but it will eventually come with enough work. That's when the hard work really starts. But if at least the head has the right size, that's something that you won't struggle with. So it will make your life a lot easier. So if you like this video, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Do not hesitate to share. If you want to learn more about oil painting, you can check out my oil painting course. It's you get to my website. In the education section, you'll have all the information, and you'll learn awesome things about oil painting. Alright, I'll see you for the next video. Take care and have fun painting, have fun drawing. Bye.